All right, everybody, welcome to chapter 2. We're finally here. This is session number 6, kind of moving on to the next little unit. If you're just joining us for the first time or you're finding this video a year from now, I highly recommend you go back and watch the first 5 videos to make sure you're caught up. We've been building a demo or building a sample file, a worknote database that you can use on your shows. Real quick, for those of you watching on YouTube, if you haven't already, you're going to want to download 2 of the demo FileMaker files that I made for this session tonight. You can find both of those on GitHub. There's a link both in the live chat and in the video description. There's one for Gobos and one for color. So definitely go download those, or else most of what we're doing tonight will not work for you because you'll need those things to get started. Okay, let's dive right in. Great. So again, all that stuff here is on the GitHub. Anything I do that is not specific to these classes, like these tools that I've made, are for just everyday use. You could implement these into your own solutions, completely separate from what we're doing in these classes. But it's all going to be here under useful tools. So there's a color library, and then there's also a web Gobo library. Okay, so the purpose of what we're going to be doing tonight is we're going to start taking the instrument side of our database and transforming it into more of a fully featured paperwork and data management tool. So the first thing to do with all of that, of course, is to figure out how we can put Gobo images onto our paperwork and how we can put color swatches onto our paperwork. Both of those things take a decent amount of work. I've tried to simplify it as much as possible, and using those demo files, I think it's going to help you a lot as well. But that's the purpose of tonight's class. And then once we get past that, probably next week will be the next sessions. We're going to start actually creating instrument schedules and other pieces of lighting paperwork that you can use for your shows. Okay, so the first thing we need to do before we try to import anything is to go ahead and set up our Gobo table. So to do that, I'm going to go into Manage Database, Command-Shift-D, or File Manage Database. And I'm going to go over to my tables tab here. And if you remember, we have instruments and work notes so far, as well as an admin table, just so that we could have a layout that didn't link to anything. I'm going to create a table called Gobo, just called Gobos. Now, I will say tonight during this session, for at least this session, name the fields and the tables that I am doing with you exactly as I'm labeling them, because the scripts that we're importing in reference those names. You can obviously go in and change those things if you want, but you will need to update the scripts to reflect whatever nomenclature you want to use in your solution. So I'm going to make a Gobos table, and I'm going to go into that. Again, I'm just going to delete these default fields. And I'm going to add really just 2 fields. I'm going to add Gobo name as a text field and Gobo image. And the Gobo image field is going to be a container. So we talked about containers a little bit when we talked about photos a couple weeks ago. A container is basically, well, what it says. It's a layout object, or excuse me, a table field that can contain an image, a video, a PDF, a audio recording, any kind of, I believe, there's certain limitations, but can hold lots of different kinds of files. So Gobo name, Gobo image. So once we have those in there, I'm going to go into my relationships manager, and I'm going to go ahead and define how those Gobos are related to my instruments. I'm actually going to do a little bit of reorganization here. I'm going to put the instruments at the center, whoops, at the center of my screen. Put the Gobos over here. And I'm going to drag from Gobo name on top of Gobo. So now what this relationship will do is it'll allow me to see the Gobo records, or my Gobo pictures, on my instruments field, as long as the Gobo in my instrument and the Gobo name in my Gobo table match. It's a lot of times to say Gobo in one place. Hopefully you follow that. So this means Gobo name has to match Gobo image in order for that relationship to work. Okay. So now I'm going to click OK. So right away, nothing really happened, right? If I click on my layouts down here, you can see it's added kind of a default layout. It looks very similar to the ones we did in the beginning. So before I go any further, I'm gonna organize this a little bit by going into my layout editor, Command-Shift-L. And let's see, where should we put this? It's not really data entry. What should we call it? Let's call it blanking, but we're going to call it materials or something like that, since we'll use Gobo and color in here. Not the best name, but all I can think of. And I'm going to add another little separator in here just to keep it organized. Show materials there. Okay, so now all that did is just moved it into here so I can have it a little more organized. So what I want to do is I want to go ahead and add some of those layout buttons and some of the navigation buttons that I've created before on my other layouts to this layout. Easiest way to do that is to go Window, New Window, and then I'm going to go back, let's just say to my instruments layout, and I'm going to copy paste, let's say these two, my buttons on the footer, and my next and last buttons. So I'm just copying those, coming in here and pasting them on here. And obviously, because our sizes aren't exactly right, you got to do a little bit of adjustment, but not that big of a deal. Okay, and then let's reorganize our Gobo. Let's reorganize these fields a little bit. I'm gonna put the name probably right here, maybe make it a little bigger. And let's say, so that's 25. And then I'm just going to leave the image here next to it. Something like that. And then I'm going to drag this margin all the way up to the body or to the bottom here so that I can see multiple records on one screen. So again, I've just copy pasted these buttons in and I have resized my two fields that were automatically there by default. Now, if you don't have those fields, you can do Command K and then your field picker comes up over here and you can drag them on. And of course, you can have multiple fields of the same kind on the layout if for some reason you wanted that. Okay, so let's look at that. Of course, there's no records, so nothing is really going to show up here yet. Remember on the last class, we made this delete button kind of a smart delete button. What did we do? We made it so you could pass along a script parameter to that script. I'm going to go ahead and add that to here, to this button. So I'm just going to change the script parameter on the delete button to be Gobo. And then I'm going to edit that script. Which one was it? It was delete with confirmation. I'm going to just add another little piece of logic here. And we'll say Gobo. This value is Gobo's Gobo name. Now let's try that real quick. I'm going to go back into browse mode. I'm going to create a new record and I'm just going to call this GAM 579. So in theory, when I click this delete button, it should now know that I'm working in the Gobo table and it'll give me the name, which it does. Are you sure you want to delete Gobo GAM 579? I'm going to say no for now. So that little script that we made on Tuesday, you can already see how that can be expanded just by adding these little 4 lines of script here to be able to work on all kinds of different layouts. And of course, I want to change this to be Gobo records. Okay, so we've got a Gobo record here. You know, we could create a bunch of them. We could say GAM 201. Of course, we could view as a list and we could see multiple. See all these things, great. And if I wanted to, I could come in here with an image and I could drop an image right on top of it. And that looks great, right? But that's a lot of work to go through every single time and have to find the images you want. Keep a library for yourself, keep a folder of thousands of Gobo images or Google it every single time. So what I've done is I've created, I've put my Gobo library onto my website in a way, and I've scripted some FileMaker scripts in a way that you can, using that Gobo name, you can automatically pull down the right image directly into your container field. So I'm gonna show you how to do that in 1 second. The first thing I want to do before I do that, though, is add this Gobo name to, this Gobo image to my instrument record. So I'm going to go back over to Instruments, and I'm going to go into Layout mode. And really, as quite simple as choosing from my field picker over here, Gobo's Gobo Image. Now, just like when we set up the relationships on the worknote manager before, because these things are related, you don't have to use a portal or anything like that. You're never going to have, I mean, you might have multiple Gobos in there, but we're not going to get into that today. This is assuming that you're using one Gobo. This is all you have to do is drop that field on there. And now, should probably use a Gobo that we have in the show. So let me pull up our Gobos in a separate window here. So maybe instead of GAM 579, we call this GAM 370. Now look, anywhere that I had a 370 on an instrument record, that Gobo now shows up. Obviously that's the wrong Gobo, but you get the idea. And if I were to change the Gobo name here on this field or on this record, it doesn't show up anymore. So again, that relationship matters between the Gobo name field in your Gobo records and then the Gobo field on your instrument records. Great. Okay, so that's pretty simple, right? And you get the idea already of how we could start adding this to printed layouts. Obviously, we can come in here, we can change the size, maybe take some of the padding away so it shows up a little bit bigger. I could make it huge if I wanted to, you know, do all kinds of stuff. Pretty easy to now start seeing how you can use this to start creating your paperwork. Okay, so the next thing I want to do is show you how to import the scripts that I made for the Gobo library. So it's pretty simple. If you've downloaded the demo file, it's called colorswatches.fmp12. I am going to go to my scripts editor, scripts manager, and then under, not even opening the file, I'm still in my work notes tool. I'm going to go to scripts, import, and then I'm going to choose color swatches. And then there's only one in there. So I'm going to say, yep, create. Sorry, we're doing Gobos right now, Mike, not color swatches. Import Gobo images. And there are two scripts in there. There's one that says search server and one that says search Google. I'm going to check both of those things and I'm going to pull them in just like that. And here they are. And of course, I probably want to put those in a folder like a good organized person. Make a Gobos folder, and I'm going to move those both in there. So let's look at what this script does for a second. I'm going to look at the search server for Gobo Image script first. The first part of this is just kind of some documentation on it. I do a better documentation on GitHub where it really explains how the entire thing works. But really, you can kind of go step by step through this and quickly see how it takes the Gobo name, separates the letter from the number, figures out what company you want to use, and then automatically creates the URL to go find that Gobo. So that website is lightingpaperwork.com/Gobos, without the period. And you can see there's 3 directories, Apollo, GAM, Roscoe. And then within those, the Gobo names are formatted with the letter and then the number. So the cool thing about this script is that it's smart enough to know what of those 3 companies you want, no matter what is in your Gobo name. The only 2 rules about it. The first rule is that whatever the first occurrence of a piece of text, so an alpha character, A through Z, that has to be either A for Apollo, G for GAM, or R for Roscoe, or M for Apollo if you use MS instead of A. So that has to be the first letter that appears. It does not matter where that letter appears. So you could put 579 GAM because that G is the first actual letter that appears. That's what it's going to choose. The other rule is you can't have extra numbers in your field. So if I want to put the quantity in here, like GAM 579-2, that wouldn't work. And honestly, you wouldn't want to do that anyway. You probably want to go ahead and add a separate field for a quantity or a stock. So those are the 2 rules. Make sure that whatever the first text character is either R, G, A, or M, and make sure that you're only using integers that are the actual number of your Gobo itself. Other than that, it doesn't matter. I can add whatever other text I want. I can add size onto it if I want to. It's not going to care. It's going to go in and find it. Now, you could actually take this script and simplify it a lot if you committed yourself to only using things that were laid out exactly how I have them in the library. Of course, nobody's going to want to do that, so I would just leave it as is. Finally, the other thing it will do, and we're going to demo this in a second, is it's going to check and make sure that it actually worked. If it doesn't put anything into your container, it's going to give you an error message that says, hey, this didn't work. And then it's going to give you a couple of options. It's either going to ask you if you want to search Google for the image and go ahead and manually put it in, which is what that other script was for. It's going to say, okay, never mind, and just not do anything. Or there's a button that'll actually send me an email and tell me that that Gobo is missing, and then I can know to go ahead and put it in there. Now, of course, sending me the email is not going to be an immediate fix for your problem. You're still going to have to go get the image yourself, but the next time you use it on your show, the Gobo will be there for you, hopefully. So those are the options. The only other thing to point out about this, sorry, I'm rambling a little bit, is that almost every Gobo in this directory is a JPEG. There are a few that are PNGs, and I'm going through and trying to convert all of those when I find them. So right now there's some extra code in here that will automatically add a PNG, and just in case it doesn't find the JPEG, but eventually that'll go away, and I'll update this on GitHub when it does. So great. So I've got these two scripts on here. Don't really have to do any kind of customization to them since, again, all of my field names match exactly how they did when I set them up. So all I got to do now is add a couple of buttons. I'm going to move all of this stuff over a little bit. And I'm going to add a button that has, let's just maybe just an icon. And we're going to make this our Google search button. Magnifying glass. And that is going to perform script, search Google. And I'll make another one, and maybe this one has a little world on it to show that it's coming from the internet. And whoops, and then this one will be search server. Okay, so those are pretty cool. You know, having little buttons is great, but it's hard to remember what they are. So let me show you one more new thing here that I haven't showed you yet. And that's actually like mouse over tooltips that we can set up. So I'm going to choose this first button, and then in my inspector, under the little ruler positioning pane here, I can specify a tooltip, and I can say, let's call this search Google. And I can call this one, whoops, undo, pull from server. Okay, so now when I go back into browse mode and I mouse over those, you see I've got those little tooltips that come up. And one other little thing that's cool about that, if you notice when I'm doing this, there's a little pencil icon here. I can actually specify a calculation for that tooltip and make it somewhat smart, kind of like we did with our scripts the other day. So I can say search Google for Gobo, and then at the end of that, I'm going to append the Gobo name field to it. So now when I hover over top of it, it says search Gobo for GAM or for G370. So pretty cool. Okay, so I'm going to get rid of this image. So I'm going to hit cut, and let's see if it works. I'm going to hit the little world button. Boom, there it is. It went in and it found the Gobo. Let's try it with GAM 201. Found that Gobo too. New record, my favorite. I can't do a show without it. GAM 579. There it is. So there you go. That's a pretty cool thing. I thought of this like 2 days ago, and I made it. Actually, no, I think it was yesterday. I made this. Got it all online yesterday. So if you find any problems with it, fill out a issue request on GitHub, and I'll get it fixed. But pretty cool. Harrison just asked a question on Zoom, and that's about automating that with a script trigger. Yes, that's actually a really good idea. I hadn't been planning on showing script triggers yet, but this is probably a really good place to do that. Real quick, before I show you how to do that, I'll show you how this other one works too. So let's say the server was down or something. If I click this one, it's going to open Google, a Google image search, and automatically search for the number and then the word Gobo. And I find it kind of funny that if you look at the GAM 579 search results on Google, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like 6 of the results, 7 of the results are directly on my website. So I think I have a slightly a problem there. But great, so you can use that like that as well. And again, all that script is doing, if we look at that, it's a pretty simple script. It's opening a URL where it's passing along that Gobo name and the word Gobo into an image search for you. Okay, so to Harrison's question, basically what he's asking is, if I come in here and I type in GAM 202 and then I click out, I want this to automatically pop up. I don't want to go ahead and have an extra button to click. So the way we do that is by using what's called a script trigger. I'm going to right click on the field and then choose Set Script Triggers. Now you can see there's several different trigger options that we can choose from here. There's On Object Enter. That means when we first click into the field, There's on a keystroke, which we don't want to do because every time we type, it's going to do the script. On object modify, so this is after it's been fully modified. And I'm going to choose on object exit because this is when we leave the field. I don't want anything to happen until after I leave the field. So I'm going to say on object exit, search server. OK. And now let me delete that one. Create a new record. And let's call this, how about GAM 206? I don't know what that is. As soon as I click away, it found the Gobo for me. So totally up to you, totally up to your preference if you want it to happen automatically or if you want to click the button. I typically like to click the button because I don't like, especially when I'm dealing with the internet, I just want to be able to have the control over it. But I mean, it could go either way, it really doesn't matter. So just to look at this real quick, let's see what other Gobos we have. There's a GAM 579A. So that's a good example. What happens if I add the size to the end of it? GAM 579A. Doesn't matter. Figured it out because again, it only cares about that very first letter. What happens if I have a Gobo that is 579 GAM? Doesn't matter, found it, because again, that G is what matters. Cool. So that's linked up there. Now, there are ways that we could automatically populate this list based on our light-write import. That's a little bit more complex, and I promise you that I will show you how to do that, but that's going to be on a future session. I'm not going to do that tonight. But it's really easy to go in and when you do your import, also have it create all the Gobos for you that you already are using in your show. That way you're not having to scroll through your whole list and say, okay, what other Gobos do I have here? What else could I use? So super handy. Great. Okay, so we talked about tooltips, we talked about instrument records. We did that. So that basically covers Gobos. Hopefully you can use that tool that I built for you. Again, like this, you can use the example I gave you or just look at the website, see how the website is laid out, and then you can use this however you need to pull stuff into your solutions. So, cool. Okay, we're going to move on to color now. So the first thing I want to do before I really dive into implementing color into our database is I want to show you how the demo database works. So I just opened that colorswatches.fmp12 file that is on GitHub. And right away, you see there's a layout here that I did some kind of fun formatting to. And as you scroll down, you start to notice that the text starts to be different colors. So the way this file works is it has a company name, a company number. There's a calculation field that automatically combines those two things together. And then each one has a record for red, blue, and green. So obviously this isn't perfect. You know, you can't take these three values and transform them into DMX and light a show that way. But what you can do is use it to style your swatches like this. As we scroll down, you see there's a whole bunch of them. And you also have the option in this to create some manual swatches. So I think those are all the way at the bottom. Oops, getting a phone call. So down here at the bottom, you see like there's an RGB one that has a red, green, blue, a CMY one that has a cyan, yellow, magenta. Now you might be thinking, okay, well, what is this actually? And the answer to that is these are just Unicode blocks. Unfortunately, there's not an easy way to conditionally format a button or an object based on those values, at least not currently in FileMaker. Maybe one day there will be. So what I do instead is I have Unicode block characters because it's technically text. I can format that with any color that I want. Works super, super well. Great. So let's go ahead and before we move on, let's look at some of these fields in the database manager of that. So I've got red, green, blue, company number. I guess the combined was something I committed before, and really you'll never have to edit that, so it doesn't need to be a calculation. And then you can see the two calculation fields here are calculated by using the text color function, where it's text color and then the text that you want to format, and then RGB values. So these RGB values are coming directly off of these other field names. Great, so before I go ahead and import any scripts or import any records or anything like that, I want to go ahead and set up that color table here within my FileMaker database. So I'm gonna, within my own solution. So I'm gonna come back in here into my database manager, and I'm gonna make a table called color swatches. Again, I'm going to delete these fields because I really don't need them for this purpose. I took a little screenshot of our fields so that we can remember what we had. Unfortunately, you can't have multiple database managers open at the same time on 2 different files. So if you don't remember what you have, it's good to just take a quick screenshot or write it down so you have a list here. So we've got red, green, blue, gel combined. I don't know why I have such a hard time typing when I'm doing these. Like, I promise you, I know how to type. It's just for some reason hard to do. Oops, what did I do? Oh, I hit the wrong button. Gel company, gel combined. Evidently, I can't talk and type at the same time, so I'm going to shut up. Gel number. The sample text you don't need. I'm going to put it in here just for importing purposes. I have that on there just so you get the idea of how the scripts worked. And swatch. Okay, so like I did before, I like to just create the text fields first to get them in there quickly, and then come back in and change them to be what I need them to be. So swatch calculated is going to be a calculation field. And the calculation is going to be text color. And again, it's going to ask me what the text should be. Now, to get that, I'm going to do double quotes. I'm going to come over here to Google or to Wikipedia, and I'm going to choose one of these block characters. So I think what I did in mine, I don't remember which one it was. Maybe it was this lower 7/8. Choose whatever you'd like. You know, they're all formatable. And then I'm going to do 3 of them. Boom, boom, boom. RGB. And this is going to be red, green, and blue. And sample text, we can do the same thing. I'm going to come in here and I'm going to copy paste this so I don't have to do it all again. Change that to a calculation. And let's say this is some text, exclamation point. Great. So I've got those fields set up, ready to go. Click OK. And of course, it created a color swatch layout for me here, which I want to go into my layout manager and move here under my show materials folder. And maybe we organize this a little bit better. Actually, I'm not going to organize it yet. I'm going to show you a better way to do that in a second. So great. So we have, oh, we didn't set up our relationship. So I'm going to go back to my database manager, and then I've got color swatches all over here all by itself. We want, let's see, which field was it? It is the gel combined field is the one we want to set up a relationship for, because gel combined is the letter number. Now, the way that I have this written, you do have to use the numbers as written, so no apostrophes or excuse me, no hyphens or anything like that. You could definitely change your calculation, script some stuff where you could, but for today's purposes, just you have to have it formatted, you know, with the letter and then the number. So again, relationships, gel combined is going to link up with color. So just like that, my relationship is set. Okay. So now I want to go ahead and pull in the records. So there's a couple of different ways you can do this. You could export them if you want to, but because this is already a FileMaker file, we're actually able to pull these records directly from the file using FileMaker itself. So I'm just going to close my color swatches table altogether because I really don't need it anymore. I really don't need this anymore either. And then I'm going to go, making sure that I'm in my color swatches layout, which I am. I'm going to go to File, Import Records, File, and then I'm going to find that color swatches thing that I downloaded, just the FMP12. And it says that it's not authorized. Yes, I want to authorize it. And I'm going to add records here. And then what I want to do is make sure that matching names is selected. And again, this is why it was important to make sure that the names were the same, because now it's going to automatically do that. If you didn't make the names the same, you can reorganize these things the way you want to. And of course, you cannot import sample text or swatch calculated because they're calculations. They're based on the other fields. And then if you want to, you can go through here and go through and just kind of see and make sure that everything you have is there, which it is. So I'm going to say import, imported 946 color swatches. And as I start going through, you see that all that information is there. Now, you might say, I really want it to look a little bit nicer, but I don't want to take the time to do all of that work. So you can actually, unfortunately, you can't, there's not an easy way without some plugins to import a layout from another solution, but you can copy paste layout objects. And since we named everything the same, there is absolutely nothing stopping me from coming in here, selecting everything on this layout, deleting the stuff that's here, and just plopping it on there. So I would recommend you do that because then you get the fun little color coding and stuff that I did on the boxes. The only thing you will have to do is come in here and change your background color. So for example, when I look at this, everything is, it's all on that gray background for now. So again, to do that, I'm gonna click on body, change the color to be, let's say black. And then on the active row, make it like slightly less black. Just like that. And boom. Now we see we've got everything there. So now you might notice right away, wait a second, there's a question mark under our sample text. If I click in it, you see that it shows up. When it has a question mark on a layout, it means that the text box is not large enough to fit the contents. So again, this is just kind of a dummy field, so it doesn't super matter to me what it says. I'm going to change it over to just say MWLD for now. And because it's a calculation, when I come in here, it's automatically going to update that on all those records. Cool. So now what you might be wondering and might be asking yourselves, okay, why are there two fields here? Why do we have a swatch calculated and a swatch manual? The reason for that is because of this stuff you'll find all the way down here at the bottom. You unfortunately are not able to, you can't change a calculated field. Like if I try to type in this, it's going to tell me I can't do it because again, it's based on those other things. So if I wanted to have, let's say, split colors or make my own custom colors, the only way to do that is to be able to have all of these values kind of copied over into that manual field. So if you only ever want to use the stock colors, then you could just use the swatch calculated field. Otherwise, we were going to use that manual field on your actual layouts. Great. And real quick before we move on, let's go ahead and add our navigation buttons to this as well. I'm gonna close the demo file completely. I'm going to come back here to instruments, and I'm just going to grab all those navigation buttons from the bottom. Oh, wrong button. Why can't I grab them? Shift. There we go. I'm going to copy those, and I'm going to put them on this layout. I wish it would remember exactly where they were, but that's fine. Okay, and then as you might imagine, I'm going to come in here and add a little bit more functionality to my delete button. I'm going to say color swatch. So now I've added the delete button, and what I want to do is add that color swatch parameter over to my deletion script. So I'm just going to drop it right here at the bottom. And then value here will be, I forgot what the names were. Color, gel combine, that's it, sorry. Okay. Great. So now again, right where I've used that same script and I have the option, here's just like make a new one here. If I wanted to call that, let's say R, something like that, and I hit delete, it's going to pass that along right there. So great. What you might be able to, like I said, this combine field right now is not actually a calculation field. I guess when I originally set this up, I had a script that made this. If you wanted to, you could script out where it's going to grab the first letter. You could make a calculation where it grabs the first letter and the number and combines them. But really, I mean, until they add more color, one of these companies adds more color, there's not really a reason to do that because every color is in here already. I don't think like eColor or anything like that's in here. So you might, sorry for those of you across the way who are We're using other colors, but these are the three big ones, so they're there. Okay, so that's working great. The next thing we want to do is go ahead and put that portal over, or excuse me, not that portal, put that field over onto our instrument records, just like we had with our gobos. So I'm going to come back to instruments here, go into layout mode, and because I've related it, I'm going to say color swatches, and I'm going to drag my swatch manual field right on top here like that. For now, I'm just going to leave it as is and see what happens. Got to find something that actually has color. There we go, R2006. There's a little green swatch. So you see it's showing those three text characters there. What I would suggest you do so you don't accidentally edit this is on your layout itself, change this field under data management to not allow entry in browse mode. So I can now have it like that. I can click on it and nothing happens. And then of course I can also come in here and change the background to be no background, have no line around it, maybe even make the text like a size 25 or something like that. And because it's text, it's gonna be formatted. You're gonna use the same kind of formatting rules that you would use on text on that field. So great. So maybe I could even come in here and I can make this color field a little bit smaller. And this is kind of aggressively large. Let's calm down with this a little bit. Maybe 12. Give it a nice size. I'm going to put it right here next to my color swatch, or to my color field. Great. So you get the idea. You can format this however you want. If you wanted to, since we now have those RGB values, you could write yourself some scripts that could go through and change the color of the text of your color field if you wanted to. I personally don't like to do that because I like to be able to have the text a little bit easier to read, and I'd rather just have the swatch next to it. And you see right away there's a couple of, well, that's interesting. What? R58 is showing up as green. Why is that happening? Anything else look off? Okay, let's go investigate that real quick. Materials, color swatches. I'm going to do a find for R58. Oh, well, that's interesting. So let's figure out why that happened. So I've got swatch calculated is definitely the right color, but my manual is the wrong color. So let's come into our database manager and see why that is. Oh, okay. This was my fault. I must have accidentally messed something up when I made this. I will update this on GitHub. Okay, what's going to be the easiest way to fix this? So in that color demo file that I made for you, there is a single script that will automatically copy the contents from Swatch Calc over to Swatch Manual. At some point when I was making this yesterday, a couple colors just got messed up. So I'm going to go back into my scripts manager here, and I'm just going to import that script. Whoops. I'm going to just import from color swatches, create manual swatches. Okay. And then really that's all there is to it. I'm just going to double check here. And I'm going to get rid of this if statement. So basically what this script is going to do is it's going to show all the records, go to the first one, and set the manual field to be the same as the calculated field, and go through all of them and then stop after it's all done. So let's run that real quick. Great. And now when I go back over here to instruments, there we go. R58 showing up as the right color. So again, that is my bad. If that happened to you, that you did nothing wrong, that was just a problem with my file. So I will update that on GitHub for the future. But once you've done this, like if you can grab that script in here and run it again, I would comment out this if is empty, these two lines. But other than that, you can run it and it'll fix that problem for you right away tonight. That's something I just did that I don't think I explained. To disable something, that's Command /. So when it's grayed out, it's disabled. You can also right click and say enable, disable to disable those things. And I'm just going to leave that in here just so I have it. Great. Okay, So you might notice right away, okay, well, this one doesn't have a swatch, and that's because that just happens to be how this color was written. This is Lee 26, but it's Lee HT 26. So you could get complicated if you want to and go ahead and make a whole bunch of smart fields to figure out that kind of stuff. Or you could do it the slightly easier way, and on a show-by-show basis, just add yourself a swatch and just say Lee 026 and say LHT 026. And then it's red. So I'm not even gonna put RGB values in there. I'm just gonna copy paste those red blocks in and call it good. And you see right away, it showed up there for me. So again, as you go through time, you start adding those the color names that you use over and over. Once they're built in, you're good to go. Same thing here. I've got some default ones, but if you wanted to do different, let's say you had a yellow magenta split, as long as you have a name for it, let's say YM, I could come in here and I could copy just one block and then one block from here like that. And then once I go back, let's say I change this to YM, boom, I've got a yellow magenta. So you might even be able to, if you have a small color scroll, you could get creative with that. Of course, you're limited by how many characters you can fit. So great. So the last thing I will show you about this before we move on to our final topic of the day is how to handle things like combo gels. So there's definitely some in our show. Here we go, 3220 and 119. So in Lightrite, of course, John gives you, two little swatches there where you have a color and then a little frost over top of it. What I'm going to show you tonight is just how to just extract the color. I personally don't care to see the frost on the swatch. When I'm looking at a report, I can see from the text that there's going to be a frost there. I don't need a little white symbol with it because to me, it's just extra stuff on the page. So what I'm going to show you tonight is how to just basically ignore everything from the plus sign over. So to do that, we're going to actually have to set up, let me pull up my demo here real quick, make sure I have the right thing. We're going to have to set up another field on our instrument records that's going to be used in the background to help us determine if there's a plus sign in our fields. So I'm going to open up my database manager. Open up the database manager, and then under instruments, I'm going to make a new field that is just color, call it color single maybe. And that's going to be a calculation. Create. And I'm going to paste some stuff in here right now, and then I'm going to kind of peel it apart and show you what it does. So it looks kind of complicated at first. But basically what this is doing is it's saying if there is a plus sign in there, if that equals 1, so if in the color field there's a plus sign equals 1, then I want it to go at everything left, of the position of the plus sign in my color field. So I'm trying to think of a better way to explain that. The best thing you can do right now, if you're trying to follow along with this, because this is the last thing, is to Google position FileMaker, Google left FileMaker, and Google pattern count in FileMaker, and kind of get an idea of what those three things do. And then you can see how these things have gotten nested into each other to give us that value that is left of that plus sign. Wish there was a better way that I could explain that without like a whiteboard. Like if we were in a classroom, this would be pretty easy. I could draw it out for you. Perhaps I should have prepared better, but again, Google position, FileMaker, Google left, and Google pattern count, and then you should be able to hopefully figure out how that stuff works. I'm going to make sure that that calculation result is stored as text. And then under storage options, I'm going to say do not store it. I want it to recalculate whenever it needs to in case we change a color. Okay. So now when I click OK, nothing really has happened here. But if I open up my layout editor and let's just copy paste the color field over here for now and change it to color single, you'll see that what's happened is it's R3220 and it's stripped away that R119. So it gives us that data that we need. I don't have to actually show this field anywhere. It just needs to be attached to the record. And because it's a calculation field, it'll do it all automatically for me. But I have to have it there in the background to be able to create that relationship. So the last step of this is to go in and change the relationship between the color table and the instrument table. So I'm gonna go into my database manager. And under relationships, I'm no longer linking gel combined to color. Instead, I'm linking gel combined to color single, or whatever you want to call it. So two ways I can do that. I can click on this and delete it, or if I double click, I can just come in here and I can change that that relationship. So now it's saying gel combined equals color single. When I click OK, boom, now I have my swatch there, and the ones that were single didn't get messed up because it's still returning this this swatch to us in the background. And there's a no color block there. Lee pointed out on the YouTube chat here that when I ran that script in my color manager, I accidentally got rid of my RGB value and my other swatches, and that's absolutely right. So if you wanted to remake those, could do that really quickly. Just say R G B. Oops. You get the idea. I'm not going to do the CMY here and waste everybody's time, but you get the idea. So yeah, again, that's just because that script was there, and I will fix that for everybody. Okay, so that pretty much covers gobos and color swatches. The only other thing that I had promised tonight, we've got about 15 minutes left, so I'm going to try to make it quick, is one more layout object called tabbed layout objects. So rather than messing up this instrument layout that I've already started to make, I'm going to actually make a copy of this layout that I'm going to call like a focus assistant or something like that. So instead of this like one long list of records, it's going to only show me one at a time. So to duplicate that layout, I'm going to go to Command-Shift-L for my layout manager, and I'm going to duplicate the instruments layout, and then I'm just going to rename it. I'm going to call it Focus Assistant. And then I can say open. And then, of course, right away, it looks basically the same as the other one. So to avoid any kind of confusion, I'm going to close the other one and only have this one open. And I'm going to switch it over to just a single record mode here. Go into my layout editor. And when I'm in a single layout mode, I don't necessarily need these sub-summaries anymore that we created in week 1. So I'm going to just delete. Oops, I'm going to go into part setup, and I'm going to delete both of those sub-summaries. Okay. And now what I want to do is I basically want to create an object on this layout that allows me to switch between different tabs, showing me information about that light. So let's say maybe one of those things is going to be work notes. I'm gonna move all of this stuff off of the record, off of the body for now, so that I have room to work. So I'm going to do right here under, right next to your button bar, there's a tab control. I'm going to click and I'm going to drag like so. It's going to ask me to create some tags. So I'm going to just say maybe channel info. I'm going to say media or templates. Templates in color. And I'm going to say work notes. And I'm going to say I want them to be centered, and I want them to all be the same width, the width of the widest. Great, so now I can click between these 3 things, and you see I've got channel info, template, color, work notes. Now, as I click between these things, I can start moving these fields back onto my layout. So I'm going to move this stuff here inside of my channel info. Just like that. And then here under work notes, I'm going to move this whole work note portal that I had onto that tab. Come on, scroll for me. There we go. Whoops. Sorry. I got to make it all a little bit smaller first, it looks like. All onto this tab. Of course, when I did that, it messed up all my text boxes. Why can't I click tonight? I've been working in FileMaker for about 9 hours today, everybody. So please bear with me. I'm very exhausted at this point. So the cool thing about doing the work notes in a tab like this is now I could show a whole lot more. I could double click on this portal and I could say, show me maybe 9. God forbid I have 9 work notes about a single light, but if I did, I have the option to see that there. So when I go back into browse mode here, and I go between these tabs, boom, now I've got all that stuff ready to go. And let's say for templates and color, maybe I wanted to copy over some of this stuff and just make it a little bit bigger. That's not what I copied. So now maybe I really want a big Gobo image. Maybe I want the swatch to be nice and big. Let's say size 30. We could even, since it's a text, again, we could center align that. We could say color here. We could center align that. Boom. So you can see how I can start laying the stuff out in a way that makes a lot of sense. I could even come in here and add a Photos tab. My Photos tab, I'm just going to copy paste another container for now. I could have my, I don't think we added an instrument photo record or thing, did we? We didn't. Let's add that really quick. We'll get to this in a future lesson, but on my instrument table, I'm going to add a focus photo. A focus photo is going to be a container. And I'm going to put that right there on the Photos tab. Great. And maybe I want focus status. Maybe I want focus and focus status to also show up there. Okay, so obviously not going to do anything right now, but in a couple weeks, it'll do something for us whenever we get to that. So now I've been able to have this kind of focus assistant layout manager or layout that I can use really quickly back and forth between things. And of course, if I wanted to, I could view this as a list, just like we did before, and have a bunch of individual ones. But when you click on it, it changes all of them, and I find that incredibly distracting. So I think that this the tabbed view works way better when you're just viewing it as a single record. And then, of course, you can go back and forth in it like this, however you want. Okay, anything else that I need to cover today? Let me double check. No other questions or comments in either YouTube or Zoom. Let's see. Oh, let me show you. Yeah, one more thing I will show you about this. You probably noticed that when I was specifying these tabs, you can also put calculations there, like we've done with our tooltips or with our buttons. So let's say I wanted to add I wanted to pass the channel or the channel number along here. You could do that pretty easily by just going like this. And now, what did I do wrong? Oh, I forgot to click change. It's funny because I did the exact same thing earlier. Okay, so channel, space, quote, quote, space, and then between the quotes, do 2 ampersands, and I'm going to say channel number, and I'm going to say rename, and then click OK. And now, as I go through the records, that gets smarter. And the only thing you might notice is now the whole things are changing size based on how long that field is. So I can come in here to this and I can say, instead of width of widest, I can just say fixed width of, and let's say maybe 150 pixels. So now no matter what, they're going to be the right size. Pretty cool stuff. Okay, so that is all the content I have for tonight. We did gobos, we did color swatches. Hopefully that gets you guys all started off on a good foot on your solutions. I'm not sure what the next session is going to be yet. I haven't planned it, but it will definitely be continuing to expand on this channel stuff. If you saw, we added this focus photo thing, you're probably already thinking, wait a second, we created a work note photo insertion tool a couple weeks ago. Could I copy paste that and use it as a photo or as a focus photo insertion tool? And absolutely you could. So, go wild, have some fun, and we'll see. We'll see where we go next. So I'm going to hang out for, let's say, another 3 or 4 minutes if anybody has any questions. Otherwise, I will email you all with whenever the next one's going to be, probably next week, and I'll see you then. All right, looks like there's no YouTube questions coming in. So if you do have any, feel free to shoot me a message. I'm going to go ahead and end the YouTube stream, and I will see you all next time. Okay, guys, we are no